Okay, we should be recording.
Okay, thank you, Debbie. Hi, everyone. This is Sue Reynolds with the American Student Achievement Institute. This webinar is for district teams participating in redesigning school counseling. And the focus of this webinar is applying for funding. We're really excited that your schools have completed the redesigning school counseling process, and they're ready to give you the information that you need to apply for funding to support their efforts. So this kind of wraps up the whole process for the most part, and we're just really excited to be at this point. Your schools have done a wonderful, wonderful job. So here's our agenda for today. We're going to look back real quickly, both at the process and the products that your schools now have. And then we'll look ahead a little bit to a new initiative that would follow redesigning school counseling if you or your schools would like to participate, called Guiding All Kids. Then we'll just talk about grant writing and some grant writing tips, followed by grant writing tools. And then for those of you who are interested in the Lilly Implementation Grant, we'll talk a little bit about how we'll help you write that Lilly grant. And then finally, we'll end with a discussion prompt for you to talk about if you are going to apply for funding to support your school counseling programs, and if so, what needs to be in the content of that application. So okay, so let's begin by looking back. And I think this is really important now to kind of see and think about where your schools have been. As you're getting ready to write your grant, part of what you'll need to explain in any grant application is kind of how you got to where you are in your thinking, so that your funder can understand that this wasn't just kind of a random shot in the dark, oh, let's do this and we want some money for it, but this has been a very careful planning process that's been data driven. So as we look back to where you and your schools have been, in January, your schools put together a steering team and a very broad-based council. I think that's really important in terms of your grant application, that you're able to establish that in some districts there were literally hundreds of community members serving on the various school counseling councils. So I think you'll be able to really come across well in any grant application that you had a broad-based input into the development of the program that you're asking for funding to support. And then also in January, your schools collected data. And again, I think you're going to want to pull that data into your grant application to show folks that you not only decided where to go based on data, but you will also be able to show that you have baseline data already. And I think that's going to put your application in for any funder ahead of others, because you've already got that baseline data in, and as well as target data. So I think that's really going to make any applications that you write powerful. Then in February, your school set program goals, and I want to emphasize, and I think you'll need to emphasize in any grant application that you write, that all of your program goals were about helping students make sound choices in areas that impact high achievement. So, this is a school initiative, so the focus has to be on achievement. But what we're doing with school counseling is helping kids make good choices so that we can raise achievement and reach the academic goals that are in our school improvement plan. So your schools have developed goals, and then they and you work to expand resources. And part of the expansion plan was to apply for funding for some schools and some districts. So some of you are now talking with your community foundation or applying for the Lilly Implementation Grant to provide funding to address your initiative. And if your school and you were thinking about having a lot of funding, that meant that when we started to narrow down your program goals to priority goals, you probably had the vision that you could tackle a lot of program priority goals. because you anticipated having a significant amount of funding to support a program that would do that. If you're at this point not thinking about applying for a lot of additional funding, then your priority goals were probably very few in number because you didn't have the resources to expand the program delivery. So, okay, so you've got program goals and priority goals. And then in March, you started looking at data that would help you see what was getting in the way of reaching those goals. And again, I think in your grant application, this is going to make your applications really strong that you did a root cause analysis. I would certainly refer to that in your grant application. Most schools, when they get to this point, will just have a hunch of why kids weren't making those good choices, or they won't even talk about the whys at all. They'll just go right from the choice to activity. But you're going to be able to talk in your grant application about why kids didn't make the choices that you are wanting them to make. And you'll be able to put data to that. And I think that's going to make your application really strong. You'll also be able to talk about all of the research in terms of best practices that your schools did in order to address those root causes. So I know that some of your schools maybe went to different conferences that were more general in nature, but I also know that a lot of your schools, when they went to those conferences, they were searching for activities that would tackle or address a specific root cause that they had identified in the school. So, so we've got root causes and we have root cause data. Then in April, your schools have been talking about different delivery methods, if they were planning to use a traditional school counselor delivery system, or if they were going to expand next year into different delivery methods, including teacher advisory programs, parent-based programs, community-based programs, and academic integration. So for some of your schools, you are expanding the delivery method, the delivery system, and I think, again, that's going to make some of your applications very strong because it's very non-traditional and kind of out of the box. And then your schools also have defined the activities that they wanted to put in place to address those root causes. And so now in May, I see that screen says March, that should say May. In May, in April, your schools have been developing a 4-year or a 1-year, it was their choice, implementation plan, and a 1-year or a 4-year budget. And so that's kind of your next step too, is as a district, is to say, okay, here's how we're going to be implementing district-wide. And, you know, for some of you, you'll want to just plan 1 year out. For others, you'll want to plan 4 years out, especially if you're interested in the Lilly funding. And then as a district, this is kind of your next step also, is putting a budget to that 1 year or 4-year implementation. And that's really the goal of our webinar this time, is to start thinking about that budget and then how you're going to fund that budget. So, okay. So I do want to emphasize, and again, this is something as you write your implementation grants, I think it's really important to get this across to the funder, because this is very different. There's really no one else that's approaching school counseling like this that we're aware of, and I think it makes your application unique. And that is that you started out with achievement goals in your school improvement plan. So this was connected to your school improvement plan that's in place already. It's not just random, it's not ancillary to what's happening in the school, but it's connected to the school's goals, academic goals. Then you looked at, okay, what choices do we need students to make in order to reach those academic goals? And then you looked at, okay, what kind of guidance and counseling program are we going to put in place to help students make those choices? I know that with all of the model exploration, the exploration of models that your schools have done, Sometimes there's a tendency right now to say, let's forget this whole process that we did. You know, we went to this conference, we discovered this cool model, and let's put it in place. You know, we don't know if you do it that way, if that was really what your kids needed, or if that model is really going to be something that works at your school. So if your counselors are talking about, you know, we heard about this cool model in San Diego and we just want to do that, I'd really encourage them. The questions that I would ask is, how does that help us address our student choices that we want kids to make? And how does that model address our root causes? If there's good alignment, then that's great. If there's not a good alignment, then, you know, then why are we going to do that model? So, okay, now in the whole thing then, in this, in the way that we've approached, excuse me, in the way that we've approached school counseling and in the design of your system, the thing that's important to remember is that when you're talking goals in your funding application, you're talking about student choices. And that's something in any grant application that I would take the time to explain to the reader, because most readers, unless they're people like our organization that works with school counseling all the time, most readers don't have a clue about how to evaluate a school counseling program. So I think it will be really important for you to explain our goals are about student choices, and therefore our evaluation is our kids making those choices that we want them to make. The focus of our school counseling program is on student choices. So I think you're going to have to educate the reader a little bit as you develop your system, that this is all about develop your application, that this is all about helping kids make good choices. So, okay. So right now, here's where your schools are. They have all these products ready to share with you. So the two that we've added on since we spoke last time are the delivery methods and the activities that your schools are planning to do. Okay, so your school's next step, the thing that they'll be working on next, is just to share with you what they've done so far. So we're asking the schools to talk with the district people and to say to you, these are our priority goals. These are the delivery methods that we're going to use to reach those goals. These are the activities that we're going to embed within those different delivery methods. And this is our budget. So all of this will be coming to you. If you're a district with 8 schools and all schools are participating in RSC, you're going to get this information from 8 different schools. And really, it should not be coming to you for the first time, because in that month when we looked at goals, we created a report where you could look at all of the schools' priority goals. So you shouldn't be seeing this for the first time, but this will be like the last time that schools have to communicate with you about this. Okay, then I'm going to talk about what's coming up a little bit, and then we'll talk specifically about grant writing. So we have asked your schools to explore different delivery methods, and we know that a lot of our schools have gotten fired up about really expanding to all delivery methods and not just school counselors. So we're providing an opportunity for current RSC schools, if they want to continue working with us to develop those different delivery methods. That initiative is going to be called Guiding All Kids. You can only get into that initiative if you have successfully completed redesigning school counseling, because this is going to be the next step after RSC, after potentially Gold Star. So, so basically what we're going to do in the next 4 years is in the first year, we're going to help the schools really we're going to help the schools implement the counselor-based delivery program that they actually designed in redesigning school counseling. So they'll be implementing the things that they said that they're going to do in their RSC work. Then we're going to help them establish an overall Guiding All Kids framework. So that's going to be like a curriculum where we say, okay, in 4th grade we want students to make these choices. Here's the activities that we're going to put in place to help them make these choices. And then here's how those activities are going to be divided between the counselors, the teacher advisors, the different community organizations. So we're going to get all that organized into this overall framework. We'll do that in year one. Then in step 3 here in the first year, so next year, we will help the schools really beef up their community-based delivery methods. So they'll recruit additional partners, they'll train the partners, they'll pass out different activities to different partners. So we're really kind of beefing up the community-based initiative. Then we're going to start preparing for a teacher advisor or an advisor advisee method. So we'll recruit teachers, we'll start to develop the teacher advisor curriculum. We'll talk about all the logistics, often are the teacher advisor groups going to meet, how long are they going to meet for, how many times is that going to happen during the school year, who's going to recruit the teachers, what kind of resistance do we expect to have. You know, we'll get that all set up in the first year. Then in the second year, we'll start to implement a teacher advisor program. And then in the third year, I see that disappeared there, but in the third year, we'll continue to implement the teacher advisor program. So this is going to be a stepped implementation. A lot of times I get the question, is teacher advisor appropriate for elementary schools as well as middle and high? You bet. We're introducing a guidance curriculum, and it might be that you want students all through elementary school to have the same advisor year after year after year, so that advisor can really get to know that kid and that kid's family. Okay, so that's teacher advisor. Then in the fourth year, we'll help your schools implement an academic integration where we've given a guidance application to academic content that's already being taught in the academic classrooms. So we'll get that going in year four, and then we'll also establish the parent-based program in year 4. And I see I have my years wrong. This is actually year 3, and this is going to happen in year 2 and 3. So advisor advisee in year 2 and 3, and then we'll add in academic integration in parent-based in year 3. I'll correct this slide before we upload it. And then finally in year 4, we like always to test our sustainability plan. So in year 4, we'll have everything not be dependent on funding, and we'll look to see, okay, how are we going to continue this into year 4 with no funding available for you? And at this point, too, our fee, which we're still working to work that out, but our fee will go down to next to nothing so that you don't have to sustain our fee in year 4 of the implementation period, and we can really test then the sustainability plan. So, okay, so that's kind of it in a nutshell in terms of the process and the stepped way that we'll implement all the different delivery methods. Here are our deliverables for the next 4 years. We'll provide a framework, so just like we have with RSC, there'll be a process, an organizational structure, and a timeline. We'll provide steering team support. One thing I want to emphasize is, unlike RSC, which we designed for 2,000 schools across the state to implement, this is not going to be for all schools. This will be for a small group of schools that are really committed, and the professional development that we provide, the workshops that we provide, will be very different than the webinars that we've done with you this year. I'll talk about that in a second. So we will continue to review submissions, we'll continue to actively monitor and provide on-call, unlimited on-call support. There will be an online system that is similar to the online system that we have now, except it will be for the GAC initiative, and there will be different segments of the online system that are pertinent to different delivery methods. And then I'm really excited about this. This is something we've wanted to do for a long time. we will provide 2 different curricula for you. One will be a school counseling curriculum, K-12, that says, okay, here are what we suggest should be grade level goals, and that I think will probably align real easily with your current goals. And then we will provide lesson plans, a set of activities for you to, have your counselors do, or to pass out to a community organization, or a teacher advisor or somebody else that's helping to deliver that activity. So we'll have all of those grade level goals and grade level activities ready for you to use if you want to. You don't have to. We just are trying to save you some time by developing that for you, if you want. And then we're also going to develop a parent curriculum. That will be all ready to use so that parents can just go online and use it. All you'll have to do is either just advertise it to your parents, or you could also bring groups of parents and their children in for different workshops and have parents come, to a computer and sit down with their kids, with you and do a learning styles assessment or a career interest inventory, or talk about campus visits, or whatever. So we'll have both of those curricula developed for you. All the parent stuff will be online, and the other things will be ready for you to disseminate to whoever is providing these activities in your district. So, okay, pretty excited about that. The other thing we'll provide is training modules for the non-counselors who are involved in the program. So we'll provide training for teacher advisors, as well as training for community organizations. And one of the important things that training will include is the limits of confidentiality, because we want that teachers and community organizations to understand that if students start talking to them about certain subjects, topics, that by law they're required to break confidentiality and report those situations. So things like child abuse and neglect and that kind of stuff. Okay, then we'll also provide a searchable activity database. We're going to continue to build that database, and not only with the activities that we're writing, but also activities that schools are doing. And the nice thing about this activity database is that it's going to be searchable by provider. So let's say you've got a community organization, maybe your public library wants to provide some activities but isn't sure what to do, or you're not sure what they could do. You could just go into this database and say, show me what public libraries across the state are doing, and get some ideas that way. We'll also provide for you evaluation tools, so you'll be able to do the student survey, the student opportunities checklist, the counselor time use log. Those are the same things that you used last year as an RSC school. And then also you can, we'll provide for, and this is for all of our RSC schools, so we'll provide a priority goals data update, and then a tool where you can analyze those priority goals. And this is going to be for all of the RSC schools, not just those who are participating in Guiding All Kids. So even if you don't participate in Guiding All Kids, you'll be able to do with your council a year from now this priority goal data analysis. And then also for all schools, not just Guiding All Kids, we have the councils meet once a year specifically to do an annual program design and to make tweaks in the program dependent on what your priority goals data says. So even if you don't do Guiding All Kids, everybody will do those 2 steps. Okay, communication tools, that will still be there, as well as with redesigning school counseling, and then the district level reports will be available as well. Okay, so one thing about the workshops that we'll do next year for schools that are continuing into Guiding All Kids, we're doing workshops instead of webinars. This is our preferred professional development model. When we're trying to reach out to 2,000 schools, we don't have the capacity to do workshops, and so many schools don't have the capacity to get people out of the buildings and provide transportation to workshops. So when we're trying to reach 2,000 schools, we go to webinars. But when we're trying to reach a small number of schools, we do workshops because they're a whole lot better. So this will be very, very different than RSC. So imagine 10 teams with the entire team meeting in Indianapolis together in a learning community where teams have a chance to really spend time talking among themselves and to each other. This model where we create these small learning communities, it really brings about creativity, and it really enables schools to embed new initiatives into the school and the community successfully. We're constantly looking at where's resistance coming from, what are your next steps, and schools are learning from each other as well as learning from us. I think schools normally tell us that they learn just as much from the other schools as they learn from our content. It's very, very powerful. So a typical agenda for these workshops, if schools continue with us, is that we open up by putting everybody in the room, so 60 people or so, into a huge circle. Each school starts by giving a quick progress report. This is what we've done in the last 4 to 6 weeks. They share their successes, they share their challenges. If there's a challenge, then we just stop right then and there and everybody brainstorms and helps that school think about how to get past that challenge. So schools will share things that they've tried, and it's really powerful. Then we'll go back and do a presentation of new content and upcoming tasks, what their next steps are. And then we always end the day with an hour or two of unstructured team meeting time. It's so hard, especially with community people, to have those meetings once you get back to school. So we just have the meeting right there. So at the end of the day, the teams can get together and talk as a team about how they're going to take that content home and what they're going to do next. So okay. Submissions, I wanted to point this out. This is going to be nothing like RSC either. So much in RSC, we had to check things to prove that your school was compliant with Gold Star or compliant with RAMP. And so we were doing a ton of checking. Also, because the process was the same for all schools, there were a lot of things that all schools did the same that we could check. But in Guiding All Kids, every school will be doing something different. They'll all be focusing on enhancing different delivery methods, but it's going to be different in every school. So there'll be very few things that we can check. We will ask schools to update a few parts of their redesigning school counseling system. We'll expand the steering team a little bit. We'll add additional community partners. We'll give them a chance to add new priority goals. Depending on if they get a lot of partners, they'll have time to tackle more goals. And then they'll update activities. But there's no real rubric to that. It's just they'll be doing that as they make sense. The main thing that we'll ask them to do is to submit 3 times a 1-page update that just kind of talks about the state of the whole process, the state of Guiding All Kids in their school. And then we'll put all those pages together into a newspaper that we'll call the GAC News, and so that everybody can kind of read what everybody else is doing as well as we'll be able to. And then finally, for schools that continue that are doing the Lilly Grant and they're funded through the Lilly Grant, we'll help those Guiding All Kids schools create their progress reports and their goals reports, their data reports, and their budget reports for the Lilly documentation that I'm sure Lilly will ask for over the next 4 years. Okay, timeline. If any of your schools are interested in GAC, Guiding All Kids, the applications will be available tomorrow, and we'll send everybody an email that gives you a link to apply online. There will be also on Thursday a webinar at 1 o'clock. And note the time change. We've been back and forth between 1 and 3 and finally figured out 3 o'clock was not going to work. So it's 1 o'clock. That'll be a 1-hour webinar that just kind of introduces GAC to people. Application deadline is the 26th. We postpone that, push that back 2 days. We'll notify schools on the 28th, and then we'll have a grant writer workshop on May 4th for any schools that are interested in submitting a Lilly implementation grant to support their work in GAC. And then the Lilly deadlines, Lily will notify schools if they've gotten a grant on September 30th. And if schools applied but did not get a grant, we'll let them back out of being involved in Guiding All Kids. But if they applied and got a grant, then the expectation is that they'll follow through with Guiding All Kids. Notice that we gave schools 2 weeks to let us know if they're going to withdraw. If they didn't get Lily funded, that gives us 2 weeks to help your schools find a different funding source. So just because they didn't get the Lily money doesn't mean that they don't, they're not able to participate in Guiding All Kids. We'll look for a different funding source to help them participate. So okay, so that's Guiding All Kids. I'm going to pause here, ask questions, answer questions real quickly, and then we'll go on to the meat of this webinar, which is fundraising. So I see one question in there. Debbie, do you want to share that?
Yeah. So we're down to, how are we to determine if we want this without knowing the cost and how it's going to compare to the other things we are wanting to write within the grant?
Yeah, very good question. That's why we haven't released the application yet. We're doing our final budgeting on our end to see how much this is going to cost us, so that we can let you know what our fee is going to be. So, we have to budget this too, and that's really time consuming. So we'll have that finished tomorrow, and at that point we'll post the application. We'll post probably post a little video about Guiding All Kids and also let you know what the cost is. I can tell you it's not going to be cheap. It's not going to be like redesigning school counseling. And that's because we're only working with a small number of districts or schools, and as opposed to being able to split the cost 150 ways like we were able to do with redesigning school counseling this year. We'll only be dividing the cost a small number of ways. And then also the support that we're providing is like 1,000 times more intense than the support that we were able to provide with redesigning school counseling. So it's not going to be cheap. We will though make the 4th year relatively inexpensive, like very, very cheap, because whatever we charge in the 4th year is probably, if schools want to continue to have our services after that 4th year, that's what we'd have to charge. But at that point, everything on our end will also be developed. So we're not going to have to charge very much to sustain after the 4 years on our end. So I'm thinking we usually try to get our initiatives down that a school, if they wanted to continue with us, could have a bake sale or two and be able to fund our services. So I would look for a pretty hefty fee in the first 3 years, and then a very, very, very small fee in the 4th year. And then if schools decided that they like the online system and they liked having our support, that they could continue to fund us with a couple of bake sales, or just a fundraiser from their PTA or whatever. We like our initiatives to sustain forever. In our School Improvement Institute, we've had schools that have been with us for a dozen years, but it works because our fee is so small after the first couple of years that they can sustain with us. So, okay, I hope that answered that question. Another question, Debbie?
Yeah, she says thank you. And then what criteria will you use to select GAC schools?
Yeah, so the GAC schools we've experimented over the last 20 years of doing this with different kinds of applications, and what we find is there are some schools that come in that write wonderful applications, and when they come in, I started to use the word duds, but I mean they just don't follow through. And then we have other schools that write horrible applications, but they're like, they get in and they're just so energetic and follow through, and I mean they're into it. So we find applications to be really hard to use to identify who's going to be a good school. So one of the ways we're going to narrow this down is to give preference to schools that have been in RSC and have completed RSC. We know that those are schools that are in this for the right reasons and are able to follow through on tasks and submit work. So the first thing we're going to do is narrow this down from 2,000 schools to the schools that have been involved in RSC and started RSC in 2015, 16, or 17. So that'll narrow it down considerably. And then we're going to put one narrative on there where we ask the principal to write a 300-word statement about why he thinks that Guiding All Kids is a good fit for the school. We just want to make sure that the principal understands what Guiding All Kids is, and we think that question will bring that out. So, but other than that, it's going to, and then the other preference we'll give is to districts that bring in every school in the district, or if there's some huge districts like IPS, if they want to talk with us about a stepped implementation where they bring in a portion of the schools, we'll look at that. Other than that, it's going to be pretty much first come, first serve. That that's how we did redesigning school counseling. It was just whoever got the applications in first, that's who we worked with. We've done that in a lot of our initiatives, and it seems to work for us. And then we'll probably put in the memorandum of understanding that if for any reason your school disengages, and it's not a good reason, that that's fine, but they'll still have to pay us. So that way, that protects us a little bit too, because it makes schools really think about, are we going to actually do this work? Because if not, we're going to have to pay for it anyway. So we'll put that in the memorandum of understanding. And that sometimes that worries schools, that how are we going to define disengaged? But I think by now with RSC how much we go after schools if they start to disengage, and it will be at a point where a school says, stop nagging us because we're not going to do this work, and then we'll say, okay, then you have to pay anyway. So at any rate, hopefully that answered that question. Any other questions, Debbie?
Nope, that should be the last one. Thank you, Sue.
Okay, very good. So let's talk about fundraising. I'm going to talk about it just in a real general sense, because I know some of your schools are not, some of your districts, some of you are not planning to ask for Lilly funds. So I'm talking about fundraising in a general sense. So there are two places that I go to a lot to get information about grant makers and to kind of find grant makers that might be a good fit for us. One is the Foundation Center, so that's a kind of a clearinghouse of information about grant makers. And the other is GuideStar. GuideStar gathers financial information about foundations and charities, and it's kind of a good place that you can go to kind of find information about potential funders. One tip is to not be wowed by the size of the foundation's grants. So if you start to read about a foundation like Lilly Endowment, and you go to Lilly's annual report, I mean, you see all these, grants that are like $2 million here and $1 million there, and, I'm thinking, I have a little tiny district with only 4 schools. All I need is $2,000, and so don't be, wowed by the size of the grants foundations. They also make a ton of little tiny grants, but they just don't publicize those because there's only so much room in their annual report. So another thing is when you're looking at a funder to kind of look at, what are their assets. I really like to look at what are the past grants that they've given, and I'm looking to see, did they give any money to organizations that look like mine? Have they given any money for initiatives that are kind of like what I want to fund? That kind of tells me that this funder might be a good fit for me. So I'm also reading to see what are their giving priorities. I mean, if you read Lilly's giving priorities, you'll find education in there. And then I'm looking for, who's the contact name and what are the guidelines. So you'd start out maybe by going to the funder's website. Just like with Lilly, you probably went to their counseling initiative page on their website to kind of learn about them and the grant. I always look at the annual reports, and you can also look at their tax return, the I-90s are public and they're online, and so you can kind of look to see. That's another way to learn about a funder. And then another thing I like to do is I'll just cold call a funder and say, you know, could you spare 5 minutes, and then I make sure I keep it to 5 minutes. Could you spare 5 minutes for me to ask just a couple of questions to find out if I'm a good fit for your foundation? And almost always they say yes. And then I'll just, you know, I'll tell them a little bit about what our mission is, what we do, and what we are thinking about doing that we're going to need money for, and then just say, is this a good fit? And then if they say yes, then I go back through to their website to go through their process for applying for funding. So, okay. So also, when you're applying for funding, make sure you follow the directions on the app. If they limit the number of pages to 12, then limit your application to 12, and it will really frustrate the funder if you get to 12 pages by making the font size 4 or 6. I used to do that, and I heard from a funder, you give me a headache, Sue. You know, at least use a 12 font. And I sometimes make my margins really small, but I don't go, I think I said 12 font. I never go below a 10 font. So I want to make it easy for the grant readers to read. Also, a mistake that sometimes rookies will make is they'll send a grant of a funder like 6 different things that they're thinking about doing, and they'll say to the funder, you pick one. Which one interests you the most? The funders don't want to do that. They want to know what interests you the most and what you want money for. Number 3 there, only send the application to the foundation's contact person. A lot of times folks will think, well, if I send it to the president of the foundation and the contact person and this person that my uncle knows, you know, that's going to increase my odds. It just confuses everybody because now we've got the application in 3 different places and we don't know. It's just not a good idea. So just whoever they say to send the application to, send it to them. And then also be real clear about who the contact person is in your organization. A lot of times schools will send in a grant application. We manage some grants, so sometimes we get applications. And there'll be like, you know, the signature line will have like the principal's name, the counselor's name, the superintendent's name, and I never know who the contact person is. So make sure that your contact person is very clear. In Lily's case, there's a cover page that you'll fill out that will make that clear. Do the math. Double check the math. And I can't emphasize that enough. It slows things down. If I'm reading a grant app and on the budget page the math doesn't add up and I really like the app, then I have to go back to the applicant and say, you know, please redo your math, and they have to resubmit it, then I have to check it again. Double, triple, quadruple check the math on your budget page. It also, especially if you don't have a lot of experience writing grant applications, I would have a financial person in your district give it a read to check the appropriateness of your line items. For example, a lot of times it's travel, and you know, does travel go in with the conference that you're going to as a conference expense, or does it go in the travel line item? So I would just check with the financial person, make sure that where you put items is where they belong. And then I'd also have them just kind of, I'd ask them, are these costs realistic? I tell you what I do when I'm writing a grant application, I do my homework. I make sure that the costs are perfect so that I'm not asking for too much money and I'm not asking for not enough, and I'm not asking for enough money. So I figure out how many miles it's going to take to drive to the airport, and what's the cost of a ticket to fly to San Diego. I do all that specific math so that my budgets come in realistic. So yeah, but if you're not going to do that, at least run it by somebody who does budgeting as a job, and ask them if they'll just, kind of eyeball your costs and make sure that you haven't under or overestimated what a cost is. And then number 3, be realistic. When we budget anything, like right now when I'm budgeting Guiding All Kids, I don't put fluff in there and figure, oh, I'll just put some extra money in case I forgot something. we do it real realistically so that we have enough money that we need and not too much. Okay, so that's the math. Now, here are some success boosters. So and this is actually, I met with Lily last week, and I kind of explained that this was our approach to them. We met with the head of their the education division, as well as the head of this initiative and their evaluator, and we were just kind of chatting about, I was doing kind of once a year I go in and talk to people to give them to make sure that we're still on their radar and they know what we're doing. That this was kind of our annual meeting. But I explained to them, when we've been advising schools on what to look for funds for, that we feel that you can use Lily's funds two ways that are good for Lily. One is that you can use the Lily funds to bring in other funds. So you're kind of leveraging those funds to give other money into your school district. Or you can use the funders' money to make the most out of your schools and community resources. And I explained to them that with redesigning school counseling, that's what we've been doing, that we're using the planning grant, but also suggesting schools to use the implementation grant to get the most out of the schools and community resources. So creating an organizational structure, recruiting volunteers to complement the work of the professionals. So you're recruiting community partners to complement the work of the school counselors, to develop programming, to develop curriculum, and then to train people so that they have a new set of skills that will go with them beyond the life of the grant. So, I really wanted to point this out to you guys because we have not emphasized bringing in additional funds because we personally don't think that kind of grant, that kind of initiative is sustainable. And if we really care about kids and we're doing this for kids and not just for the money, then we want to make sure that this is sustainable. So our whole approach has been to make the most out of your schools and communities' resources. And in those 4 bullets there, that's what we've been trying to do, to get an organizational structure in place that's going to sustain after the grant period, to recruit volunteers that are going to be there after the grant, to develop program, and to give both your counselors and your volunteers new skills that they'll be able to take with them. And on the part of your counselors, we usually think about counseling and guidance skills, but we're helping them develop the skill of creating an organizational structure, the skill of recruiting partners, the skill of delegating work. It's that set of skills where your counselors are becoming program managers involving a whole big group of volunteers in addition to their counseling and guidance skills. Make sure that you keep number 3, make sure you keep the wording positive. I always laugh when I get an application in that says, well, we're applying for this grant because our school basically is horrible and we need to improve it. So instead, you want to say our school is wonderful and we want to enhance it. So just be careful, keep your wording positive. And then it's also going to help to show support from local organizations. One way you can show support is by commitments to contribute money, which we haven't emphasized in redesigning school counseling. Another way to show support is to show a contribution of time. So you'll be able to show that you have school counseling council members that have already donated time and have agreed to come in as partners, which means they're going to continue to donate time in implementing the program. So we had a big donation of time from a broad council in planning, and now we're going to have a big donation of time from your council partners in implementation. So, and you'll be able to show that in your application. So again, in looking at any grant application, be patient. It may take 3 months to get a response. The biggest grant that I ever got was a multi-year, multi-million-dollar grant, and it came 7 years after I applied. I don't know why, but the funder all of a sudden they thought, hey, this would be a good match, and they remembered us and they called us and said, you still want to do this? But most times it takes about 3 months to get a response. And in this case with Lilly, they're going to get hundreds, if not 1,000 plus applications, they're going to have to read through all those. Now, if you don't get a grant, one thing I really want you to remember is that it's not a reflection on the quality of the program that you're proposing. There's some degree of luck that's involved. If it just happens to be when the funder is looking for this, and all of a sudden, at the next moment, your application's on their desk, and it's like, oh yeah, that's perfect. So remember that the door is not permanently closed. It just means that at this point in time, it wasn't a good match for that funder. I always will call the funder, and I'll just ask, I'm trying to learn, and was wondering if you could help me, if you could tell me why our proposal was rejected. And then if my proposal was a good fit for that funder, the funder will usually say, we ran out of money, or we had so many applicants we couldn't fund all the good ones, and they'll ask you to come back at a later point with another proposal. So, or if you weren't a good fit, I often have funders say to me, we're not a really good fit, but try this foundation. They're more in line with what you want to do. So when you call, you get to do that. Plus, you're developing a relationship, which is really important to fundraising, is to have those relationships. Okay, and then the other thing is, we'll say this to you too, is that if you don't get the funding from that funder, go to a different funder. It's not the end of the road. There's lots of other funders who might be interested. So, okay. And again, this is what I just said, from beginning to end, grant seeking is all about good communication, and it really comes down to relationships and getting to know people. So, that's one of the reasons why we keep a good relationship with lots of different funders. They give us good ideas, but then we also want them to know about the quality of our work, and the quality of the work of the schools that we serve. So, okay. So, in line items, when in the budget tool that we're providing for you, these are the line items that we've used. When we were at Lilly last week, I checked to see, do you have any problem with these line items? And they said that they don't have a standard set of line items, but these are perfect for them. I put a red flag next to personnel. That's my red flag, because I think that any initiative that's based on personnel, even if you have a promise for funding to continue this after 4 years, your funder's going to worry that that funding will fall through, and then all their money will have been wasted. So think carefully if you're putting anything on the personnel line item. If you want to explain why that funding is not going to be needed 4 years from now. So, you're doing training or you're developing programming, and you need that money now in the first 4 years, but you're not going to need it later. Okay, the things in blue are things that are line items where we do think you'll have larger budgets. Materials and supplies, meYbe you'll need that to support some of the discussions and meetings that you're having. Meeting expenses, we think that'll be big time. We anticipate, a lot of different groups getting together over the next 4 years to design curriculum, to have discussions, and you may need to pay for space and refreshments. And again, if you're not working with Lilly, any direction you go, you're going to have meetings, and so that has expenses attached to it. Then contractual stipends. In contractual technical support, that's where I actually think most of your money will be, just to buy time for your folks, and then to provide help for your folks through the technical support. So, okay, so those are line items, and again, I keep coming back to kind of talk about Lilly, but this is going to be true for any grant that you're applying for. So stipends, as we've talked with your schools, that's been an area where folks have had a kind of a hard time wrapping their heads around. And finally, I said to one group, and I could just see the light bulbs go off, I said, think of these as part-time jobs. or extracurricular assignments. So really, if you're thinking about designing a comprehensive program, you cannot do that during the school day. Everybody's busy. You know, we don't want to take the counselors away from kids and parents to design this stuff. You can't take your teachers out of the classroom to design this stuff. You know, your principals are busy. So normally with an initiative this big, there ends up being some outside of contract time. So, you know, a couple hours, you know, twice a week after school or once a week after school or some weekend time or evening time. So we've been saying to your schools, you know, think about, you know, offering a part-time job to your different delivery method coordinators or to the grade level teacher advisor coordinators or to your overall project manager. We'll, if they participate in Guiding All Kids, we'll give them some suggestions on how much time these different tasks will take so that they can kind of put a budget to that before they are writing their grant applications. And then another way we've said this is think of these as extracurricular assignments. You know, a lot of times counselors will feel, and I think it's just because they're such good people, but they feel guilty about taking money for the work they're doing outside of the school day. You know, we have to explain, you know, your basketball coaches are getting funded for the work that they do outside of the school day. This, you know, this needs to be the same. You're doing a service for the school outside the school day. It's okay to make this into a part-time job or an extracurricular assignment. So, okay, I'm going to pause here and then we'll look real quickly at the tools. I think I'm going to go over about 10 minutes. I keep planning this to be an hour and then it always ends up going over 10. I'm sorry. So, so Debbie, other questions?
Right at this time, we have no questions. Thank you.
Okay, good. So let's look at grant writing tools. So these are, there's some new tools in here, and we'll go online in a second. I'll show you how to access these. But just a reminder that you have a district summary that shows you the submission status for all of your schools. So this would tell you that, you know, this second elementary school, you know, they're like turning in everything. This is a school that's probably going to finish RSC in good standing. This would be a good candidate for the Guiding All Kids initiative. And then it also tells you, you know, this is a school that if this is where they are right now, they're probably not going to finish RSC, so not a good candidate. And really in any model that you're going to put in place, you know, let's not think about Guiding All Kids now. In any model that you're going to put in place, if you're looking for your home run schools, it's probably going to be those schools that had no problem with engaging and meeting deadlines in redesigning school counseling. So if you're thinking about a stepped implementation where you're going to start with some schools in the first year and add other schools in the second year, I'd be looking for these folks that are engaged and have demonstrated that they can meet deadlines and meet criteria. So, okay. So then when in your applications for Lily or anybody, when you're trying to establish that you've had in-kind donations of time, and you're trying to establish that you've had a broad base of people write develop your plans. This is a new report where we just kind of tallied for everybody the total number of people that have been involved in your school's councils. So this district, which has done a lovely job, can say that they had 207 people involved, and you know they can say that they had 36 parents, they had 31 people representing service clubs, 9 people from community organizations. So you can kind of spell that out in your grant applications. This is the time use data for your counselors. Just a reminder that if you're, one of the things that you're maybe wanting to do is to remove non-program tasks from counselors. This gives you some data that you can kind of establish that you know what the time use has been so far. Also, this could be evidence of why you want to implement different delivery models. You know, you could say, you know, while on paper we have 4 school counselors. In reality, we only have 3.5 because of the non-program work that we have counselors do. So we're going to work to remove that non-program over the next 4 years, and we're also going to add in different delivery methods so that these 4 people, the 4 professionals, are served by, 37 different teachers and community members. So, okay. In terms of data, if you're looking for data, just a reminder that you've got the district drill down reports. You've got all that district data. One of the drill downs is about, it's by student groups. So if you're trying to create a case that your initiative is going to serve low-income kids, you could pull in their data. If you're wanting to say that your new program is going to serve minority students, you could pull in some of their data from that report. So you're able to get that drill down data from the district level data. Then don't forget that you also have a report that shows what all of the school's goals are. You could start looking for similar goals to put in as your district goals. This is a new report where we have just listed all of the community organizations that your district has recruited. And then this is also a new tool, the Lilly grant, but all grants this would be good for, asks for you to create a timeline in terms of a Gantt report. And what you would do is you would just write, here's a major task that we have to do, like recruit teacher advisors or recruit community partners. And then whatever the time window is for that, you would put it in. So it's for the first year we've designated it by month, and then after that it's just designated by year. And then the system will create this Gantt report. And how we're envisioning this being used in addition to going into your applications, your funding applications. I also could see this being blown up into a poster and put up in the teachers' workroom so that everybody kind of has a sense of how you're progressing through the 4 years. So, okay. So this is another new report. I don't think we've looked at this one yet, where once your schools have their budgets in, this will total up all the budgets from all of your schools to give you a sense of how much money it's going to take to implement the initiatives in all of the schools. So if you're a school, this happens to be I think this is the Dunlin schools, but they'll be able to see, between all the schools, all the money that is being sought. So, okay. For your schools and for you, we have a new budget generator. So you basically just put in that when you want this budget to start, and then you just put in what the expenditure is. This will be a drop down of all the different line items. On budget notes, I really encourage you to put budget notes in there. This tells me how I came up with the number that I'm putting over here on the right. I like doing this because I forget, and then later I'm coming in thinking, how did I come up with $3,120? I can't remember, and then so I go back to the budget notes. I always, in my grant applications, I always put the budget notes in for the funder to see, because I want the funder to know how carefully I've thought about this budget, that I just haven't randomly gone down and thought, oh, I think I need, $4,000 for supplies and $2,000 for contracts, and I want them to see how I figured that out. I think that shows a funder how serious I am about getting this money and how seriously I've taken the application. So after you put all this stuff in, then the system will print out a budget report. If you don't want to include your budget notes, just copy this into a Word document and then take out that column. So, okay. Okay, so let's go to the online system, and then I think, yeah, then we'll talk a little bit about the Lilly grant specifically, and there's just a couple things I want to say about that. So in the online system, am going to scroll down to apply for funding. So this first step says review district level reports. All year long, we've given you the opportunity to put in a district steering team and district level student choice data, district goals, district priority goals. If you've been doing that, this just takes all the reports that are higher up on the process page and puts them into one place for you. So this is just something that as you're writing your grant applications, you could just go in and click these reports. It just is putting them all in one place. It's nothing new. Okay, then review district numbers. This is a new report. I think you're going to like this. This is where those new reports, so there's the membership of the school leadership teams, the school counseling councils, your school partners. There will be a list of your partners, and there's the funding and that your schools have budgeted for each of the years, so that you can think forward 4 years. Okay, so that is the district numbers. Then write the grant application. There will be I didn't show you that yet, did I? There will be a sample Lilly grant format and application for you to look at. This will be up by May 4th. And then we'll also put in, if you're interested in Lilly, we'll put in a sample Gantt chart for the Lilly initiative based on the timeline that we'll be working with schools that are participating in Guiding All Kids. So I need to change this so that well, when you open these, you'll see that this is just for schools. Our suggestions are just for schools that are, let me back up. There'll be 2 suggestions for grant applications. There'll be one that is for schools who are not doing Lilly, and then there will, let me back up. There'll be one for schools that are not doing Guiding All Kids, and then there'll be another one for schools that are doing Guiding All Kids. And then in create the Gantt chart, there will be just a suggestion for schools that are doing Guiding All Kids, because we don't know what your timeline is if you're not doing Guiding All Kids. So here's where you would click to do the entry for that Gantt chart, and that will spit that Gantt chart out. Create a budget. We just looked at that. There's your page for that. And then as a district, if you would like me to review your Lilly grant application, you need to do this. Click there. Oops. Send me the grant app. That's going to, that'll send that directly to me. And then on the next line, you're going to schedule a consultation. So you click there, and all you do is pick out the time that you want me to review your grant app, and then I'll meet with you on the phone and we'll go over it. Just make sure that I have the grant application the day ahead, and I've set up the schedule so that I can set aside 3 hours to review your grant application and then 1 hour to talk to you about it. So I think that'll do it, but just make sure you get me that application ahead of time. The day ahead, not like 5 minutes ahead. And there's one point where there's one evening hour. Everything else is either 11 to noon or 3 to 4. So that gives me the previous 3 hours to read your grant app, so it'll be fresh in my mind, and then we'll talk. Okay, I'm going to go back, and let's look at then the Lilly grant. So just a couple of thoughts. First of all, this should not be in this section. For all of the grant, for any grant, no, this is right. I'm sorry, I'm mixing myself up. Okay, this is Lilly. If you are not doing Guiding All Kids, this is what we're going to provide for you. It will be an outline that will suggest that mirrors the RFP discussion. It mirrors the RFP. And then we'll suggest to you different things to put in here. We will also provide some suggested language, but we'll very much stress don't use our language. I think that would be a huge mistake. We want the readers to know that you've thought this up, that it's in your hearts and your brains, and it's coming out in your words. So we'll give you some ideas, but do not copy our language on this one. If I didn't think that was important, I wouldn't emphasize that because I know it's a hassle to take what we write and put it in your words. But I think if the grant writers start to see the same sentences time after time after time, it's going to be a question mark in their mind about how much you really believe in this, or if it's something that our organization believes in. So rewrite everything. Okay, and then we've given you links. So like we're suggesting, that you say in total, in your own words, in total X number of individuals served on our school counseling council, and then here will be links to those reports. Or down here we're suggesting that you list your priority goals in this section. Here's a link to your priority goals so you can just pop them out and put them in there. So, okay. So that is for districts that are not continuing with Guiding All Kids. Then there will be a different version for schools that are preparing to participate in Guiding All Kids. So this is only for schools who have been accepted by us into this new initiative, so a small number of schools. Then we're going to do a grant writing workshop for those schools. It'll be May 4th, 9:30 to 4, so all day long. It will be in Indianapolis. We don't know where yet. And what we're going to do is we're going to provide a specific template for the Guiding All Kids schools that has sample language and suggestions and tips about what this model is all about. So we're going to provide the template. One at a time, we'll talk about each section of the template, and then we'll say, okay, when they ask you to describe the model that you're going to be implementing, here's how to describe GAC. It will give you tips and links, but really make it a GAC-specific application. And if you're working with another model, any other people might be able to provide for you some suggested language for how to describe their models as well. So, okay. And then during the workshop, for each section, after we've talked about that section, then we'll give your team time to actually write that part of the application. So, we'll talk about goals. We'll say, okay, this is where your priority goals need to be, and then we'll give schools 20 minutes to find their priority goals and put them in, type them in. So schools will need to, GAC schools will need to register for this workshop, and when they get the acceptance email into GAC, it'll have that in it. So, okay, now back to all applications, to Lily. So what I'm giving you now is just some of my hunches. Having applied for funding successfully over a bunch of years, kind of learned to read an RFP and ask questions and talk to funders, and funders will never do anything to give us a leg up of, so that we're a step ahead of other potential people that are applying. But I've just kind of gotten to a point where I can kind of make hunches about what's important. So here are my hunches, and these may be true or not true. Sometimes I'm off base. But here's what I'm thinking as I've read and studied and paid attention to everything with this Lily initiative. First of all, I really think it's important for you to focus on the purpose of the grant. This grant should be focused on helping students who become emotionally healthy, realize academic success, graduate from high school, obtain post-secondary credentials, and prepare to work in a global economy, live and work in a global economy. If what you want to do does not help students, does not increase the number of students who can do one or more of those things, then this is not a good fit for you, and I wouldn't apply. Also, your grant doesn't have to do all of those things. You may decide that you just want to focus on helping kids become emotionally healthy. That's okay. That's big time okay. So it doesn't have to focus on all of those things. Your grant also does not have to focus on all students. You may want to focus on helping all 6th grade boys become emotionally healthy, and that's okay too. So you don't have to, comprehensive doesn't mean that you're doing everything. It can mean that you're focusing on adding one program to your overall program to make that overall program more comprehensive. So, okay, so think about that. Then also, we need to remember that this is a competitive grant. That's why I think it's so important that you really focus on the grant's purpose, which is stated in the first paragraph on Lily's website. So you got to remember that it's competitive. Don't copy our language. Put it into your own words. It's got to come from your hearts and your minds. It's a competitive grant. It's got to be a good idea, but the grant reader needs to feel you when they're reading that grant application. Okay, others. I think sustainability is going to be really important, and I think that a lot of times we don't know who the reader is going to be, or who the readers, probably plural, are going to be. A lot of times it may be that you get a reader that thinks that initiatives are only sustainable if you're bringing in additional dollars. And if your grant does not, if you don't have promises of additional funding because you don't need additional funding, so, and remember RSC, we've set this up so that you don't need additional funding. But we just want to be careful in case you get a grant reader who thinks more money is important. We have to help the grant reader understand that while you don't have money, you're getting donations of time. So you want to explain that you are using the grant funds to get the most out of your school's resources. And I would put in something about the fact that you know that you're not bringing in additional funds and that you have purposefully done that to make your grant sustainable. I would acknowledge in your grant application that you know that you haven't brought in more funds and that you did that on purpose. I think that's going to be important. And again, you may get a grant reader who really gets what you're doing, that you're creating a sustainable system, but you may not, so we want to protect against that. Okay, then you want to explain that you focus on in-kind donations, and I would list, this is why I think it's important to list that you had, 200 organizations involved in the planning, and you have 75 different partners who are going to contribute their time over the next 4 years. And if so, I would equate that to a dollar amount. You can base it on a typical teacher pay maybe, and say, we're implementing, our plan is implementing a teacher advisor program, and if we were to bring in outside funding to do that, it would cost this much just to pay for that time. But, we're doing that as part of our in-house services, so it's not going to be, it's equivalent to this much money. Or the Kiwanis Club is going to put this on. If we hired a consultant to do that for us, an independent contractor to do that for us, we would have to pay somebody $10,000, and we're getting it for free because our Kiwanis is going to do it. So if you have the time to do that, that may be helpful there. Okay, in terms of program, if you are focusing on a comprehensive model like what we've suggested with RSC, so in RSC programs, we focused on serving students in all 3 domains, academic, career, and social emotional. If you're going to do this comprehensive model, rather than on just focusing on careers or just focusing on a reality store or some kind of one program, or just focusing on 3rd graders, if you're going to be comprehensive in nature, we would suggest that you explain why you decided to focus on all needs and not just on career needs. So you could say something like, you know, we're going to continue our program that's going to focus on all needs, but our career needs are weak. So while we're doing academic, career, and social emotional, we're going to really hit the career hard. Or you could say, you know, our counselors have been used to do non-program things, and we really don't have any program in place, and therefore we want to hit all three areas, academic, career, and social emotional. But I think that you're going to have, you know, Lily's asking people to say why, if they are focusing on just one area, why they're focusing on just one area. I think it's going to behoove you to explain, if you're focusing on all three, why you're focusing on all three and not pinpointing. So, and then another thing that I think, if you are focusing on three, that you'll be able to explain is that your program is going to be evaluated every year, and it's flexible. So, you know, if all of a sudden one year, you know, the social emotional needs go up, you can be flexible that year and put in more social personal counseling. So, you know, it's flexible year to year. When you don't focus on just one thing, that gives you a lot of flexibility in your program so it can follow what the kids' needs are. And then finally, this is just one of my hunches. I have a hunch that it's going to behoove you to really state in the application strongly that you are addressing students' social emotional needs. So if group counseling is just one of a gazillion little things that you do, I would be sure that you say that you do group counseling and make sure that gets in the application. I guess I feel that way because this is the first application in like years where any funder has ever talked about social personal that I'm aware of. It's always been about STEM courses and school to work and career development, academic achievement. And I suspect that that Lily is aware of that, and that there's a reason that Lily has put in social personal when so much of Lily's work in the past has been about academic achievement. So, so you know, my gut is telling me that I would definitely explain how you're providing social personal support for kids. And you know, you could do that by responsive services, talking about the counseling and the individual and group counseling that you're doing. But you could also talk about how you're building students' social personal capacity through an advisor-advisee program or classroom guidance, you know, where you're going in and you're teaching social personal skills to all kids. I think that would be really good. So, okay, that's it. And I'll take questions, but I think at this point in your district, the decision you need to make is, are you applying for the Lilly implementation grant? And then if so, who's going to write it? What's going to be the content? What are you funding? And what delivery methods and activities are you going to do? Okay, this has been really long. I apologize. There's just lots that we wanted to make sure that we were relieving you with. One additional thing, we have one other district level webinar scheduled for May 9th at 3:30. That's going to be just a Q&A. There won't be any other content. I may give you some tips if we've learned things between now and then about the Lilly grant and have tips for you. I'll certainly provide that. But it's also just going to be a place for you guys to ask questions that you might have. So, okay, Debbie, questions, and then we'll close.
Yes, so Angela has a couple of kind of lengthy questions. Back when you were looking at the tools in the RSC section and you were going through the timeline, she asks, don't you want our grant written by May 9th? I do not foresee enough time to write between May 3rd and May 9th. That's correct.
Good question. So, yes, we've been like madly trying to get all this stuff ready before the webinar, and that was a page that we didn't. So I think what you're talking about is, oh, I don't have, we'll add due dates up in here. So we're going to provide So my second thought that you're talking about is this. So we're going to provide the grant application for you on May 4th, our template. So that will give you a couple of days to get it written before you submit it to us if your meeting with me is on May 9th. If your meeting with me isn't until the 17th, then you've got some extra days. So we just kind of ran out of time. I think it's going to take me a long time to read carefully through each of your grant applications, and we just ran out of days. I wanted to have all of that done by the 17th so that any input that I gave the last school, you'd have time to make some edits before it was due to Lily on the 19th. So I don't think there's any way we can get around this. If we get the outline finished before May 9th, I'll send that to you. And remember too, if it's a GAC school, we're going to do that workshop with you. So if you end up being a GAC district, that would help with that. So yeah, I know that the timeline's not really good, but there's just weren't enough hours in the day. I am open to evening hours. I just we put that one in, but if you'd rather meet with me on the 15th or whatever, just send me an email and suggest evening hours, and or weekend hours. I'm open to that too. So I often work on Saturdays and Sundays, so not a problem. Okay, other questions, Debbie?
Nope, she says thank you.
Okay. Is that it?
Yep, that's all, thanks.
Okay. Okay. Very good. So again, I apologize for the length of this webinar, just so much to cover. And feel free to follow up with me if you have additional questions, if you have a scenario you just want to play by me or whatever. We'll post this tomorrow, this webinar tomorrow online if there's others in your district that you want to look at it. Yeah, and we'll just go from there, and we look forward to talking with you again on May 9th. But if you're not able to participate in that webinar, just know how much we've enjoyed working with you as a district team. We will be sending you an evaluation survey. This is the first time we've done that. I am really curious to see to what degree you felt this was helpful in terms of coordinating different schools, as well as coordinating the guidance program vertically. So there'll be several questions about that, and any tips that you can give me on that would be wonderful, so that the next time we do this, we can make it even better. So that's how we get better, as we listen to schools and what you tell us we do. So, okay, sounds good. Thanks, everybody. And again, I apologize for the length. We went way over this time, but just a lot of content to include. Okay, thanks, everyone. Have a wonderful time finishing out the year and writing your Lilly grant. Thanks.